My daughter walked in from school on a Thursday afternoon holding a printed page, and she had this look on her face that I'd never seen before. She was 12 years old. She handed me the paper and she said, "Dad, I think I did something wrong with the kit." She wasn't worried. She was just confused, the way kids are when they think they've made a mistake they can fix. I looked at that paper. I understood exactly what I was seeing within about 10 seconds. And I stood there in my own kitchen, in the house I'd lived in for 11 years, with my daughter looking up at me waiting for me to explain it away, and I felt the floor tilt. Not dramatically, not like in the movies. Just this slow, quiet tilt, like something underneath everything I'd built had shifted exactly 1 degree. Long pause. I told her the kit was probably defective. I kept my voice completely even. I was a father for 12 more minutes before I was anything else. And those 12 minutes, just staying steady for her, were the hardest thing I'd ever done. I need to tell you who we were. Before all of it, you need to know who we were. My name is Dan. I'm 44. I grew up in Ohio. Moved to the Pacific Northwest in my early 20s. Built my whole adult life there. I work in project management for a mid-size tech company. I coach youth soccer in the fall. I make breakfast on Sunday mornings, nothing fancy. Just eggs and toast. But I make it every week. It's a thing we do. It's ours. That's the kind of person I am. Consistent. I like showing up. I like routine. I like knowing what I'm walking into. I met Kristen at a work conference when I was 28. One of those events with name tags and mediocre appetizers where everyone's pretending to enjoy themselves. She was standing near the bar not talking to anyone. And she made a quiet joke about the event to me, something dry and funny, and I thought, this is the person I want to be near. I introduced myself. We talked for 3 hours. I asked for her number and she gave it to me and then said, "Don't wait too long to use it." I used it the next day. We dated for 2 years. Got engaged. Got married. Bought our house, a white Craftsman with a big backyard and a kitchen that needs updating and a porch I've been meaning to repaint for 4 years. And then 3 years into our marriage, we had Lily. Lily. Let me tell you about Lily. She's 12 going on 40. She talks with her hands, big, sweeping gestures that she gets completely absorbed in when she's explaining something she cares about. She knows more about marine biology than most adults I know, and she will tell you about it at length whether or not you've indicated any interest. She cries at commercials. She cannot sleep if she hears a cricket in the house and will stage a full extraction mission to get it outside. She's been asking for a dog for 6 years and I have been saying, "We'll see," for 6 years, and she says, "We'll see" means yes, and you know it. Dad. She's the funniest person in my life. She has been since she was about 4 years old. She's stubborn in a way that is infuriating and completely admirable. She gets an idea in her head and she just goes. She doesn't second guess. I always thought she got that from me. I thought I saw myself in it. Kristen and we were solid. That's the word I'd have used. Not fireworks. Not the kind of marriage people make movies about. Solid. We were partners. We divided things fairly. We talked things through. We liked each other. There were hard years in our 30s where we were both working too much and the marriage got quiet in ways we had to consciously push back against. We did push back. We went to therapy for about a year. Maybe 7 years in. It helped. We came through it. I thought we'd come through it. There were small things I noticed over the years. Kristen could get distant in a way I couldn't always track, days where she'd go quiet internally. Somewhere I couldn't reach. And then she'd come back and be completely herself again, and if I asked she'd say she was just in her head. I accepted it. People have their interior weather. I wasn't always perfectly accessible either. There was one specific thing, though. Kristen was always a little on edge about anything medical. Forms. Blood work. Anything involving health records. I figured it was just anxiety about doctors, lots of people have it. I never thought more about it than that. I definitely didn't connect it to anything. Why would I have? Lily's science class in 7th grade was doing a genetics unit. The teacher was apparently fantastic. This young woman who made the whole class actually care about biology. Which is not a small feat. The unit was on inherited traits. Dominant and recessive genes. How characteristics pass from one generation to the next. The teacher offered an optional at-home activity. An educational DNA kit, a basic cheek swab. Nothing as detailed as the commercial ancestry tests, but enough to identify markers and compare them between family members. The assignment was to compare your results with a parent and see how genetic traits showed up in you. Lily came home talking about it every day for a week before the kits even arrived. She wanted to do it properly. She wanted data from both me and Kristen. She'd already mapped out what she wanted to compare. She'd drawn a little chart in her notebook. She was completely in it. Kristen said she didn't want to participate. She said it casually. She mentioned something about not trusting where the data went. Privacy concerns. She wasn't comfortable with a third-party kit holding her DNA. She shrugged it off like it was nothing. And the thing is, that's not a crazy position. Some people do feel that way. There are legitimate concerns about DNA databases. I didn't think it was strange enough to question. Lily was a little disappointed, but she pivoted fast. She said, "Okay, just me and Dad then." And that was that. So on a Sunday afternoon in October, Lily and I did the swabs at the kitchen table. She read the instructions out loud, very seriously. Very carefully, making sure she did every step correctly. She made me reread the parts she wasn't sure about. She packaged the swabs exactly according to the directions. She wrote both our names clearly on the forms. She was meticulous. We sent them off, and then honestly, life kept moving and we forgot about it for a while. I forgot about it. Lily forgot about it. We were in the middle of soccer season and a school project on ocean ecosystems and all the regular noise of life. The results came back on a Thursday in November. Lily got home from school, opened the laptop before she even took off her jacket, printed the results. She came and found me in the living room with the papers in her hand. She had that look, the one I mentioned at the start. Confused, a little worried, like she'd done something wrong. She said, "Dad, I think the kit is broken." "Can kits be broken?" She handed me the paper. I looked at it. The shared DNA percentage between me and Lily was not consistent with a father-daughter relationship. It was not close. It was not something that could be explained by an unusual genetic variation or a quirk in the testing. I know enough about biology to understand what I was looking at. I looked at it for what felt like a very long time. Then I looked up at my daughter's face. 12 years old. Her mother's eyes. The stubborn set of her jaw that I'd spent a decade assuming she'd gotten from me. I kept my voice steady. I kept my face steady. I told her these kits weren't always accurate, the educational versions weren't as reliable as the clinical ones. I told her it happened all the time. Some kind of cross-contamination. A bad swab. Whatever. I said it confidently, like I was explaining something boring and technical. She said, "Oh, so it's not right?" I said, "Probably not. Don't worry about it. I'll look into it." She believed me completely. She's 12. I'm her dad. When I tell her something is fine, it's fine. She went upstairs to do homework and she didn't think about it again. I stood in the living room holding the paper until I heard her bedroom door close. I want to tell you what happened inside me in that moment, but I'm not sure I have the right words for it. It wasn't just shock. It was like every solid thing I'd used to orient myself in the world had become momentarily uncertain. The floor, the walls, the house. 12 years of memories. Every moment, and I'm not exaggerating. Every single moment I'd spent with Lily began playing back in my mind in a completely different light. First day we brought her home from the hospital. She fit in the crook of my elbow. She was so small I was terrified to hold her. First steps, she took them toward me. In our backyard, on a Saturday morning. And she was so proud of herself she did this little bounce and then fell down and laughed. Learning to ride a bike. Teaching her to swim. Every school pickup. Every sick day where she slept against my shoulder. Every book at bedtime. Every soccer practice. Every dinner. Every Sunday morning breakfast with the eggs and the toast. All of it was real. I knew that, even then, in the first raw minutes of it. I knew that every one of those moments was completely real regardless of what this paper said. That didn't answer the question that had just opened up underneath everything. I folded the paper. I put it in my jacket pocket. I went to the garage and I sat in my car for a long time in the dark. Then I got out my phone and I ordered a real DNA test. An adult one, from a proper clinical testing company. I had a specific, controlled thought. Rule out the possibility that there was something wrong with the original kit on my end. A contaminated swab, an error, some reason that wasn't what I thought it was. I ordered it and then I went back inside and I helped Lily with her homework and we had dinner and I helped with dishes and I put my daughter to bed and I did not say a word to Kristen. The kit came in 4 days. I used it at work. Alone. In the single-stall bathroom on my floor. I followed the instructions exactly. I sent it in priority shipping. And then I waited. I watched Kristen for those 2 weeks. I watched her the way you watch someone when you're looking for something specific and don't know if you want to find it. She was completely normal. She made dinner. She laughed at something on TV. She complained about a coworker. She reached over and touched my arm when she walked past me in the kitchen. Normal. Warm. Completely. Utterly normal. My results came back on a Wednesday morning. I was at work when the email arrived. No irregularities, no contamination, nothing wrong on my end. The science was the science. Lily was not my biological daughter. And I sat at my desk in my office with the door closed and the email open on my screen. And I understood that the only person in the world who had known this for 12 years, was sitting at home in our house right now. Completely unaware that everything was about to change. I want you to understand what those next 4 days were like. I didn't confront Kristen immediately. I couldn't. I know some people would say that was weak, that I should have walked in right then and said what I knew. Maybe they're right, but I needed those 4 days. I needed to carry it alone for just a little while. Because the moment I said it out loud, the entire architecture of my life was going to collapse. And I needed, I don't know, a few more days of it being only mine. Of Lily not being in the middle of it yet. Of things still looking, on the surface, like what they'd always looked like. So I went home every evening. I had dinner with my family. I drove Lily to soccer practice. I did all the things I always did. And I thought about the timing. Lily was conceived about 3 years into our marriage. We were happy then. I thought we were happy then. There had been a stretch. Maybe 2 months. Where Kristen had seemed distant and stressed. She'd traveled for work a couple of times. I'd assumed she was going through something and I'd given her space because I thought that was the right thing to do. I thought about how specific she'd been. When she told me she was pregnant. About the dates. About how far along she was. About when it must have happened. I remembered thinking she was just organized. Just thorough. That was so Kristen. Plan everything. Know all the numbers. I hadn't thought anything of it. Now I understood exactly what those numbers were for. I thought about her sister Mara. Kristen's younger sister. Who I'd always liked. Who'd always been warm to me. Who'd said something to me at a family Christmas maybe 6 or 7 years ago. She'd had a couple glasses of wine and she'd looked at me across the table and said, "You're a really good man. Dan. I mean that. You're one of the good ones." And there was something in her eyes when she said it. Not flirtatious, not awkward, just weighted, like she meant more than the words. I'd thought it was a sweet, slightly wine-adjacent compliment. I filed it as that and moved on. Now I kept coming back to Mara's face. The weight in it. The night I decided to say something. Lily was at a sleepover at her friend Maya's house. That wasn't planned, it was just how it happened. Kristen was on the couch when I came downstairs, reading something on her phone. Her feet tucked under her the way she always sat. I had both sets of results in my hand. Folded, I walked into the living room and I put them on the coffee table in front of her. I didn't say a word. She looked at them. She picked up the first one, the school kit printout, and she looked at it. She went completely still. Not panicked. Not dramatic. Just still. Like a person who has been waiting for a specific knock at the door for 12 years and has just heard it. Long pause. She looked up at me. And I knew, right then, from her face alone, before a single word, I knew that she had been carrying this since the beginning. That there had never been a moment where she didn't know. That she had looked at that test result and chosen, quietly and completely alone, to simply decide that it was mine. She didn't lie. That's what I keep telling people when I talk about this. She looked at those papers and she looked at me and she didn't say the test was wrong. She didn't reach for a way out. She just let it be real. Like the weight of it finally had somewhere to land. I sat down, not because I was calm. Because I needed to be horizontal or seated or on the floor, and seated seemed like the most functional option. Everything rearranged itself. All at once. All of it. Every moment I'd thought about her traveling for work, I understood now what that stretch had actually been. Every time she'd been distant in a way I couldn't reach, I understood that now too. Every strange edge of anxiety she'd had about medical paperwork. About anything that might put our family's biological information in a clinical context. Every slight overdone effort she'd made to tie up Lily's features and traits to my side of the family. All of it rearranged itself into a single, coherent picture. I thought about Lily's face. I started, against my will. Completely involuntarily, I started looking for someone else in her features. Trying to see who she actually came from. And I want to tell you that this is one of the worst things I've ever done to myself. Because I didn't want to see it. I did not want another man's face in my daughter's face. And I also couldn't stop. I thought about the bike. The first steps. 12 years of Sunday breakfasts and soccer practices and books at bedtime. The specific way she laughs when something genuinely surprises her. This full body thing where she throws her head back. The way she reaches for my hand in parking lots even though she's 12 and too old for it, and she does it anyway. All of it was still true. Every cell of it. It had happened. It was mine. The biology didn't make it not mine. But it also didn't answer for 12 years of Kristen knowing. I thought about Lily upstairs doing homework in those first minutes after the school kit results. 12 years old. Completely happy. Completely safe. Completely mine. And I thought, she doesn't know. And she doesn't need to know tonight. And whatever I do next, I need to do it in a way that keeps her safe from this for as long as possible. That was the only truly clear thought I had. I looked at my wife. The woman I'd built everything with. I thought about the conference where we'd met. The conversation that lasted 3 hours. The first time she'd reached for my hand. Our wedding. The hospital when Lily was born, Kristen crying. Me crying. A tiny person who changed everything. Who fit in the crook of my arm. I said the only word I could find. Who? She told me his name. I'm not going to say it. I genuinely don't think it matters for this story. He was someone she'd worked with. This was before Lily. back in that quiet 2-month stretch I'd noticed and said nothing about. She described it as a moment where she'd felt disconnected from us. From herself. From our life. She said she'd been scared about the future and she'd done something she'd immediately regretted. She said it was brief. It ended before she knew she was pregnant. I said, "So when you found out you were pregnant?" She said, "I didn't know. I genuinely didn't know whose it was. The timing was, it was possible either way." I said, "So you decided?" She said, "I did the math. I told myself it had to be yours. I needed it to be yours. We were trying. We'd talked about having kids. I couldn't face the other possibility." I said, "That's not math. Deciding something isn't math. That's a choice." She said, "I know that." I said, "And every day for 12 years was a choice." She said, "Yes." Pause. Quiet word. But she said it. She didn't dodge it. I said, "Did you ever confirm it? Did you ever actually know for certain?" She said, "No. I couldn't bring myself to. I chose a version and I lived in it." I said, "Does he know? The other man?" She shook her head. I said, "Does anyone know?" She didn't answer right away. She said, "Mara." I stared at her. She said Mara had figured it out. Not guessed, figured it out. About 7 years ago, Mara had sat Kristen down and confronted her directly. And eventually Kristen had told her the truth. Made her swear not to say anything. Mara had kept that secret for 7 years. 7 years of family holidays. 7 years of Mara looking at me across dinner tables and Christmas parties and Lily's birthday gatherings knowing that I didn't know. 7 years of what I understood now was her carrying it, which is why she'd said what she'd said at that Christmas. "You're a really good man, Dan." Not a compliment, an apology. I stood up. I couldn't stay seated. Kristen said, "Dan, nothing has to change between you and Lily. You know that. She's your daughter. She is completely your daughter." I said, "Don't tell me what I know." She said, "I am so sorry. I have been sorry every single day. I have watched you with her every single day and I have been sorry." I said, "If you were sorry every day for 12 years and you still didn't tell me, then what exactly was the sorry doing for you? Because it wasn't doing anything for me." She flinched. I watched her flinch. And I didn't feel good about it, but I also didn't take it back. I said, "I have to go." She said my name. I said, "I'm not leaving Lily. I'm not leaving the house permanently. I need to not be in this room right now." I got my keys and I drove. 2 hours. No destination. No plan. I drove until I ended up in a parking lot outside a grocery store in a town I barely knew. And I sat there in the dark with the engine off. I called my brother Kevin. He picked up after 2 rings. I told him everything. From the school kit to that moment. Sitting in a grocery store parking lot in the dark. He stayed on the phone with me for almost 4 hours. He didn't try to tell me what to do. He didn't editorialize about Kristen or try to help me figure out next steps. He just stayed. He said, "I'm here. Keep talking." At some point, maybe hour 3, I said, "She's still my daughter." "Kevin." He said, "Yeah, she is." I said, "That's the only thing I'm sure of right now." He said, "That's enough to be sure of tonight." I sat in that parking lot until almost 2 a.m. Then I drove home. I slept in the guest room. And in the morning I got up and made eggs and toast because it was Sunday and that was what we did. Lily came downstairs in her pajamas and sat at the table and talked about something that had happened at Maya's sleepover and I listened to every word. I asked the right questions. I laughed when it was funny. That was the hardest breakfast I've ever made. That was 14 months ago. Kristen and I are not together. We separated about 6 weeks after that night, not immediately. Because we tried. We tried hard. Actually, we went back to therapy. We had more conversations than I can count. Conversations that went in circles. Conversations where I'd think we were making progress and then wake up the next morning and feel the wall again. The trust was gone. Not in a dramatic, movie way. In a quiet, fundamental way. Every time she said something, some part of my brain was working to verify it. I couldn't turn that off. I couldn't rebuild on that. Maybe someone could. I couldn't. We co-parent. Lily is with me during the week. She goes to her mom's on weekends. We are careful with each other in the way people are careful when they're carrying fragile things in the same space. We don't fight. We communicate. We both love Lily more than we're angry at each other, and that is what it runs on. Lily doesn't know. Kristin and I and our therapist have talked about this at length. The plan is to tell her. Not now, not when she's 12. Not when she's navigating everything that being 12 entails. But when she's older. With support. With both of us present. With honesty and care. She deserves the truth. I believe that completely. She'll be angry, she'll probably go through a lot. But she deserves to know who she is. I've decided not to find him. The biological father. That's a decision I made for myself. Not a permanent decree. Lily may want to find him someday and I will support her if she does. But I don't need to know him. I don't need that story. It doesn't change any story that I'm in. Mara called me about 6 weeks into the separation. She was crying before I even said anything. She said she'd wanted to tell me for years. She said she'd thought about it constantly. She said she had been wrong to stay silent and she knew that. I told her I couldn't talk to her yet. I haven't talked to her since. That's an unresolved thing I'm still carrying. Maybe eventually. Now here's the thing I have to tell you. The thing that I've sat with longer than anything else. About 3 months after everything came out, I was going through my phone, just scrolling. The way you do when you can't sleep, and I went back through old videos. I have hundreds of them. 12 years of videos of Lily. I watched them for a long time. Maybe 2 hours. Baby Lily. Toddler Lily. Lily at 5 and 7 and 9. Lily at her first soccer game. Lily on her first day of school. Lily losing her first tooth and trying desperately to be brave about the blood. And in every single video, every single one, when she's startled, or tired, or excited, or hurt, she turns toward me. She reaches for me. Even on video, even just watching her, I could see it, the way I was her true north. The way 12 years of consistent, daily love had made me the person she oriented by. You can't fake that. You can't manufacture it. It didn't come from any chromosome. It came from showing up. From eggs and toast on Sunday mornings. From reading the same book 40 times. From staying on the phone with Kevin in a parking lot at 2 a.m. and going home anyway. A DNA test tells you what you share biologically with another person. It cannot tell you what you've built. I've thought about that word a lot this past year. Father. What it actually means past the biology and the paperwork. And every time I land in the same place. It means you stayed. It means you showed up. It means when she crashed her bike into the mailbox. You didn't wince, you laughed with her. Because she was laughing. Because she was okay. Because she was yours. The test told me what I wasn't. 12 years told me exactly what I am.